Rudeus Greyrat, an ordinary pathetic loser who spent 34 years being bullied, ignored, and treated like trash, finally musters the courage to do one good deed, only to die a pathetic death moments later. The anime begins with a tragic truck accident involving a man in his mid-30s and two missing high school students. As the man lies on the brink of death, he watches surgeons trying to save him but eventually loses consciousness. When he wakes up, he realizes he has been reincarnated as a baby in a new home with parents named Paul and Zenith. Despite his infant form, he retains the memories of his past life and is given the name Rudeus, but for short, we will call him Rudy. In this new house, Rudy often crawls around with panties on his face, which causes the maid named Lilia to believe that something evil has possessed him. The setting is a rural area with no gas or electricity, and Rudy's father, Paul, practices swordsmanship. Even when Rudy falls and hurts himself, he doesn't cry, as his mother, Zenith, heals him using her magical abilities. This world of swords and magic fascinates Rudy, and he begins his magical exploration by reading books about a hidden treasure. With Paul reading the books to him every day, a year passes, and Rudy learns about different ways to activate magic. He tries his hand at magic for the first time by reciting the words to generate a water ball, and he succeeds. Excited by his progress, he continues practicing magic and eventually becomes able to cast spells without much focus. He also discovers that some magic is used in battles and attacks, making it easier for him to learn and increasing his magical capacity. As Rudy progresses, he moves on to intermediate magic and learns his first spell called Water Ball Splash. To his astonishment, the spell breaks through mountains and walls, displaying tremendous power. Concerned about the situation, Rudy's parents decide to hire a magic tutor for him, while Paul takes on the responsibility of teaching swordsmanship. In the rural area where they live, they were expecting an elderly magic tutor with a long beard and extensive experience. However, their expectations are shattered when they meet Roxy Magurdia, who looks like a middle school student. Initially skeptical of Rudy's ability to learn magic at such a young age, Roxy starts teaching him the 7 stages of magic, explaining the divisions of attacking, healing, and summoning. She demonstrates by attacking a tree and then healing it herself, leaving Rudy impressed. Rudy asks Roxy if chanting is necessary for magic, to which she affirms its importance. Rudy then tries using the water ball attack with chanting and discovers its increased power. Impressed by Rudy's potential, Roxy decides to train him further. The family celebrates with a welcome party for Roxy, and Rudy feels a renewed sense of purpose after his life was in shambles prior to the accident. He resolves to start his life anew as a diligent and hardworking individual. The scene shifts back to Rudy's past life, where he is lying on his bed, watching things on his laptop. Suddenly, a group of men bursts into his room and attacks him, throwing him out of the house. As Rudy walks away, he witnesses a truck losing control and heading towards 3 people standing nearby. He quickly rushes to save them. Returning to the present, Rudy wakes up from a short nap during his magic practice, hearing delightful noises instead of catching his parents in a compromising situation. To his surprise, he finds Roxy instead, who is also in the midst of puberty. 6 months have passed since then, and Rudy has made significant progress in learning intermediate magic. He attends a lecture by Roxy, who reveals herself to be a demon and shares information about a dangerous demon race called Supered, known for ruining people's lives. She warns Rudy to stay away from green-haired demons as they can be a threat to entire families. Another year goes by, and Rudy continues to work diligently to improve his magical skills and swordsmanship. He comes across some children playing, which triggers memories of his past when people used to laugh at him. Just then, Roxy arrives and enjoys the scenery, introducing Rudy to the kingdom of Renoa located beside the Red Dragon Mountain. She mentions the Renoa Magic University, where modern magic is taught. Rudy addresses Roxy as his master, but she feels guilty, believing that he will easily surpass her in magical abilities. That night, they celebrate the every 5th year tradition instead of celebrating birthdays every day. Paul, Rudy's father, gifts him a sword for future protection, while his mother gives him a book. Roxy gives him a magic stick with a red stone to amplify his magic. Rudy feels overwhelming joy, and Roxy decides to administer his graduation exam the following day, confident that he has mastered the basics. That night, Rudy reflects on his past life, feeling the weight of his previous depression and finding himself on the verge of tears. The next morning, Roxy prepares a horse for their journey outside the village for Rudy's graduation exam. Rudy is scared due to his painful past and his fear of socializing with people. However, Roxy tries to calm him down by sitting with him on the horse, and they set off, wishing everyone a good afternoon as they pass through the village. Rudy realizes that the people are loving and caring, and his fear begins to fade away. They arrive at the designated location, where Roxy will administer the exam by casting a water saint magic spell once. Rudy is then required to repeat it on his own. Roxy casts a powerful spell, resulting in heavy rainfall and thunder all around them. Unfortunately, Roxy's horse gets injured during the process. She tends to the horse while Rudy prepares for his exam. Skillfully wielding his magic stick and reciting the magic lines, he creates a massive cyclone even more impressive than Roxy's. He successfully becomes a water saint ranked magician. With the exam concluded, Roxy's journey with Rudy comes to an end. She is ready to return to her hometown and learn other skills. Rudy's parents approach her with tears in their eyes, offering her to stay a few more days. As a token of gratitude, she rewards Rudy with an amulet for his graduation. Emotionally touched, Rudy expresses his heartfelt appreciation to Roxy for everything, especially for helping him overcome his trauma and venture outside once again. And yes, it should be noted that a few months ago, Rudy had mischievously stolen Roxy's underwear.
Here comes the money!
Here we go.
The next morning, Rudy asks his parents if he can go outside to play. His dad and mom suggest that he be kind to others, protect them, and even find a girlfriend. Finally free from his trauma, Rudy happily ventures outside, exploring different places and enjoying the beauty of nature. However, his joy is interrupted when he witnesses a group of children bullying another child, calling him a demon. One of the children even tries to attack with a rock. Thinking quickly, Rudy distracts them by throwing water balls, and when the child attempts to hit Rudy, he easily dodges the attack. Eventually, the bullies leave and Rudy rushes to the bullied child's aid. To his surprise, the child turns out to be a handsome boy with green hair. Rudy recalls Roxy's theory about the dangerous supered race having green hair, but dismisses it as the boy doesn't have a red gemstone on his forehead. The child explains that he is a half-elf, which is why his hair color differs from his parents. Overwhelmed with emotions, he starts crying. Rudy consoles the boy and invites him to play together. They become fast friends, and the boy introduces himself as Sylph, which means spirit of wind. Sylph expresses his desire to learn warm water magic, and Rudy instructs him to memorize the chant so he can practice later. As Rudy walks back home, he finds his father, Paul, angry at him for punching the brat who was bullying Sylph. Without hearing Rudy's perspective, Paul starts beating him. However, Rudy cleverly responds, clearing all misunderstandings and justifying himself as always being on the side of justice. Realizing his mistake, Paul feels apologetic. Summer arrives, and Rudy gives Sylph numerous training lessons. Sylph is eager to learn about warm water magic and attempts to perform it without chanting like Rudy does. After several attempts, Sylph successfully casts the spell and becomes incredibly happy. They spend their days playing around the village, embracing their carefree lives together. However, when it starts to rain, they quickly run towards Rudy's house. Planning to take a bath, Rudy undresses promptly, expecting Sylph to do the same. To his surprise, Sylph remains in her clothes. Rudy skillfully undresses her, only to discover that Sylph is a girl. She starts crying, and Paul arrives, questioning Rudy about the situation. Rudy explains that he did it because he thought Sylph might be feeling cold. Understanding the misunderstanding, Paul suggests that Rudy apologizes to Sylph, assuring her forgiveness. In a loud voice, Rudy apologizes to Sylph, who cries even more, but this time, he acts foolishly. The next morning, Rudy and Paul engage in sword practice, and Paul advises Rudy on how to regain Sylph's friendship. Following his father's advice, Rudy successfully reunites with Sylph. Later, Zenith becomes pregnant, bringing joy to the entire family, especially Paul and Rudy, who are excited about having a sibling. Soon after, their maid, Lilia, reveals that she is also pregnant.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
Curiosity fills the air, and everyone watches Paul closely. Instantly, he starts apologizing, leading Zenith to feel deeply saddened.
全員が一瞬にして感づいた。俺の子だ。情けない。
Rudy finds himself in a complicated situation, torn between his remorseful father and his distraught mother. Additionally, Lilia considers returning to her hometown, which would take at least a month and pose risks for a newborn and a mother traveling alone. Reflecting on all the favors Lilia has done for him, Rudy decides to repay her kindness by taking her side and concocting a false story about Paul forcing Lilia to keep their sexual encounter a secret. Rudy proclaims Lilia's innocence to Zenith, who accepts Lilia as part of their family and insists she stays with them. Grateful for Rudy's support, Lilia vows to serve him as a maid and repay his favor for the rest of her life. The newborns are named Norn and Aisha, and they all begin living as a family once again. Lilia starts conversing with Rudy, and it is revealed that Paul was untrustworthy from the beginning, as he had taken advantage of Lilia's virginity when they were at the same dojo in their youth.
Hell to the law.
Rudy continues his swordsmanship training, playfully taunting his father, but their bond as father and child strengthens over time. The next morning, Sylphie and Rudy have a conversation. Rudy acts strangely as he contemplates joining a school to further improve his magical abilities. Sylphie tightly hugs him and pleads for him never to leave her, causing Rudy to reconsider and decide to stay with her. While lost in thought on his bed, Paul brings him a letter at night, which turns out to be from Roxy after 2 years since her departure. In the letter, Roxy reveals that she is currently staying in the Cheyenne Kingdom, employed as a tutor for the 7th Prince. She shares the similarities between Rudy's actions and hers, such as peeking at her while changing and stealing her underwear. Roxy mentions that she has achieved the rank of Water King in magic and expresses excitement and fear about seeing Rudy again. She suggests that he apply to Renoa Magic University. Paul explains that only 5 people in the world have achieved the rank of King in magic and playfully teases Rudy about stealing Roxy's underwear. During breakfast, Rudy reconsiders going to school and asks Paul to enroll him and Sylphie together in the university. However, as Sylphie's family is not wealthy, Rudy requests Paul to pay the tuition fees for both of them. Paul refuses due to financial constraints, but he proposes an alternative plan. Later, while practicing with their swords, a girl named Ghislaine, who is a beast, arrives on horseback. Zenith and Paul react joyfully upon seeing her, and they discuss the possibility of entrusting Rudy to her care. Paul asks Rudy to distance himself from Sylphie, but Rudy refuses. Suddenly, Paul forcefully throws Rudy aside and initiates a wooden sword attack. Rudy defends himself skillfully, using techniques like the water god style. Paul relentlessly attacks with various moves until Rudy loses consciousness. When Rudy regains consciousness, he finds himself in front of Ghislaine, who informs him that he will be working with her starting tomorrow. Later, as Rudy and Ghislaine continue on their journey, they read a letter given to them by Paul. The letter explains that Rudy will be working as a tutor for a 9-year-old girl in Roa, with Ghislaine serving as her bodyguard and swordsmanship teacher. Paul also informs Rudy that he will not be allowed to visit or receive letters for the next 5 years until he turns 12. Rudy reflects on this arrangement, realizing that it will allow him to grow independently, and mentions how Ghislaine is a muscular woman, teasingly referring to her as Paul's woman. Paul concludes the letter, and Rudy feels ready to start this new chapter without any regrets, understanding the reasoning behind the decision. They are welcomed with a drink and a lack of beast servants. Philip Boreas arrives, whom Rudy learns is the mayor of the town and Paul's cousin. Philip discusses his daughter's selfishness, and they plan to meet up. When Rudy sees his daughter for the first time, he is shocked by her appearance. Their interaction begins with her slapping Rudy, and he retaliates with a slap of his own. However, she quickly overpowers him and beats him up. Rudy defends himself with magic and manages to escape. Afterward, he meets with Philip, who asks if Rudy wants to give up. Rudy refuses and proposes a plan to set up a show that will encourage her to study. Rudy prays for his success in this endeavor. The next morning, they wake up in boxes, pretending that Rudy has been kidnapped. He plans to use his full magic powers to escape and demonstrate the importance of studying to the girl. However, when she wakes up, she starts shouting, and a man arrives and beats her severely. She tries to fight back but is overpowered. Rudy eventually heals her injuries, revealing that it was all part of their act. Rudy contemplates escaping to teach her a lesson as well, but he decides to open the grills with magic when the lady shouts for help. The guy tries to break in again to harm her, but Rudy blocks the door and tells the girl that she must promise not to act violently or speak loudly for him to save her. If she breaks the promise, Rudy informs her that they will part ways. The two men break in with a saw, but Rudy and the girl manage to escape. However, she immediately breaks her promise and refuses to listen to Rudy. Despite this, she decides to join him and agrees to the terms he set. As they travel, they hear the voices of men following them. They escape the town with the help of a carriage, and things go according to plan. Rudy spots a servant while they are running towards him, but suddenly a man takes the girl away, attempting to kidnap her. Rudy, using his magic powers, stops the man and demands that he return her. The man offers money to Rudy in exchange for the girl, which would be enough to cover Rudy's university fees. However, Rudy prioritizes saving her and refuses the offer, feeling the importance of her safety. He fires a fireball into the sky as a signal for help and engages in multiple attacks to save the girl. However, he is faced with a powerful opponent who throws a sword at Rudy using a god-style technique. Rudy feels defeated and is on the verge of death when Ghislaine arrives and delivers a powerful blow, destroying the sword and decapitating their enemies, saving both of them. Rudy experiences the sensation of his hands being soaked in blood for the first time. They return home, and Philip approaches them, relieved that Eris, the girl, is safe. Rudy feels like a failure for needing to be saved by Ghislaine, but to his surprise, Eris allows him to work there and be her tutor. The next morning, Philip expresses his appreciation for what Rudy did earlier, and explains that, as a member of the Greyrat family, Rudy can be utilized both physically and politically. Rudy is then introduced to Philip's wife, Eris' father, and Eris' grandpa, who shares the same violent nature as Eris. Eris' grandpa asks Eris for a favor of teaching her magic, which she requests in a beastman-like manner. Rudy is puzzled by her attitude when asking for a favor. Later, they practice swordsmanship, and Eris learns to create a fireball, while Ghislaine also learns arithmetic alongside magic. During arithmetic lessons, Eris constantly runs away, punches Rudy, or hides. Rudy tries various times to wake her up when she falls asleep, but he also attempts to steal her panties, which results in her waking up and punching him again. Rudy asks Ghislaine for help, as Eris is tired of studying. Ghislaine tells Eris a story about their past when they were part of a group called the Fangs of the Black Wolf, which also included Paul and Zenith. Ghislaine recalls a time when she was left alone and struggled to calculate money while traveling. She went without eating or drinking for 10 days until she found monster feces, which she ate and subsequently experienced diarrhea. After that incident, she developed an interest in learning arithmetic. The story captures Eris' interest, and she starts paying attention to Rudy's lessons. They resume practicing swordsmanship, but Rudy's movements are much slower than Eris's, indicating his need for improvement as he continually gets beaten by her. Rudy finds the process of earning money through his daily work tiring but remains motivated by his goal of studying alongside Sylph at Roa University. The next morning, they visit the market after their lessons. Rudy finds the walls and the city beautiful and becomes excited. While at the market, Eris starts noting down the prices of items. Rudy is called over by a shopkeeper who tries to sell him an adult medicine aphrodisiac, which Rudy takes note of. He explains some arithmetic to Eris and Ghislaine, even praising Eris for her incorrect answers. Later, Rudy encourages Eris to earn money as well while they continue noting the prices of books. On their way back home, Rudy suddenly becomes scared upon seeing the armored dragon King Perugia's sky castle. Ghislaine and Eris explain to him about Perugius, who was one of the heroes that defeated the Laplace demon, an enemy of the human race. Rudy remembers reading about it in Paul's book earlier and hopes to visit it someday. The next morning, Eris confidently solves problems without hesitation. Rudy allows her breaks and weekends off, and she buys him the medicine aphrodisiac as a gift, unaware of what it actually is. Rudy desperately tries to hide it from Eris and Ghislaine, but it accidentally drops from his hand and breaks. Rudy clumsily tries to cover up the situation by mistakenly mentioning the word aphrodisiac. The next day begins with their usual sword practice, where Eris performs exceptionally well with her high pace against Ghislaine. Eris expresses her desire to become an advanced swordswoman. They also continue practicing arithmetic and magic casting. Eris' mother, Crossbeat, sees her but ignores Rudy as usual, which leaves him confused each time. Finally, Rudy finishes making a statue of his master, Roxy, even going so far as to smell her panties, even though it's just a statue. At that moment, a servant woman knocks on the door and asks Rudy for a favor. She discusses Eris' upcoming birthday party, where high aristocrats will be in attendance. The main event of the party is Eris' dance show. The servant further explains Eris' struggle with dancing every year and asks for Rudy's help in teaching her to handle it. Rudy agrees to assist. The next morning, Philip shows Rudy books from different continents, capturing Rudy's attention. However, he finds it challenging to read them as they are written in different languages from around the world. Rudy decides to start by learning the beast god language, finding beasts to be beautiful and cute creatures. Philip grants permission for Rudy to take the books with him and borrow them. Later, Rudy writes a letter to Roxy about the languages he wants to learn and updates her on his life. He finds the beast god's language equally challenging. Suddenly, he hears the sound of Eris running, and her dance teacher explains the situation to Rudy. If Eris continues to avoid learning the dance routine, she will fail the main event at her birthday party. The teacher asks for Rudy's help. Rudy approaches Eris, finding her lying down, and tries to persuade her to practice. However, she greets him with a kick. They engage in a heartfelt conversation about not avoiding things one is already good at. Rudy understands the situation and motivates her to do those things as they lead to great accomplishments. Eris punches Rudy, and they start practicing dancing together, although it doesn't go smoothly. Meanwhile, Rudy learns the beast god language from Ghislaine and sells the statue he made in the market, earning a coin. While Rudy is trying to read the beast god language, he receives a package containing a letter from Roxy. She explains her ongoing situation and mentions that the beast god's language is indeed complicated, with books scattered around the world. Roxy shares that she received a statue from the prince that closely resembles her, even matching her body shape below. She has also written a textbook for Rudy with her own hands. After reading the letter, Rudy feels indebted to Roxy and decides that he will lick her feet when they meet.
Huh?
The next morning, Eris and Rudy practice dancing together again for the main event the following day. Eris performs well, but Rudy tells her that he won't be her partner tomorrow. However, the day arrives, and a grand party is arranged by Philip and his father to celebrate Eris turning 10 years old. The focus shifts to the main event, Eris' dance performance. Rudy and the servant watch her with great hope. Suddenly, a guy interrupts with the intention of dancing with Eris, and she gratefully accepts. The music starts playing, and the dance begins. After a few moves, Eris starts dancing too fast, causing her to fall. People in attendance begin calling her names like a spoiled child, with no improvement, and a pathetic dancer. Eris feels useless and loses her confidence. Rudy steps in, asking her to dance with him and suggesting that she follows their practiced routine. Though she nearly falls again, Rudy motivates her to overcome her nervousness. He comes up with the idea of using their swordsmanship signaling to dodge. The idea works, and the dance becomes smoother than expected. Everyone is smiling and clapping. Eris' grandpa lifts them on his shoulders, and some girls try to get close to Rudy, but Eris takes him back to the room, and the party ends. Later, Rudy gifts Ghislaine and Eris each with a stick, symbolizing their mastery. Ghislaine gifts Eris an amulet that will protect her from evil men at night, making Eris happier. The next morning, Rudy wakes up next to Eris. While walking, he sees a tower and decides to explore it. He reaches the top and unexpectedly witnesses his grandpa engaged in lovemaking. Rudy apologizes for disturbing him. He notices a shiny object revolving in the sky and prays for it to bring him a girl. Later, Rudy reflects on his swordsmanship skills and realizes that there is a significant talent gap between him and Eris. 2 years have passed, and he notices that the revolving object in the sky has become larger than before. Rudy encounters Eris talking with others and initially believes they are gossiping about him. However, he soon learns that they are actually planning a surprise birthday celebration for him. He discovers that Paul's real name is Nodos and that the Nodos family is one of the 4 heads of the Greyrat family. The current head of the family is Paul's younger brother, whom Rudy considers to be even worse than Paul. Rudy worries that having a big birthday party like Eris's could lead to misunderstandings, so he decides to practice crying to make the scenario look genuine. While talking with Gillian, Rudy notices several unusual movements happening around him. He tries to get some food, but Gillian stops him to engage in conversation. Rudy realizes that it is a celebration of his birthday. He shows Gillian the statue he made of her, but notices that the tail is missing. Rudy mischievously asks Gillian to show him her tail, and she promptly lowers her pants. To Rudy's surprise, her rear end turns out to be incredibly muscular. As Rudy examines them closely, a servant suddenly arrives, creating an awkward moment. The celebration begins, and everyone wishes Rudy a happy birthday. Eris presents him with a surprise gift, a wand made from superb materials from the best wand maker in the kingdom, bearing the sign of Aquahisha. Everyone celebrates the event, and Rudy enjoys it as well. While sitting with Paul, they discuss the younger and older brothers who were taken away shortly after birth due to the tradition of losing the successor. Hilda, Paul's wife, resented Rudy's presence because her own children were not there. Paul offers Rudy the opportunity to marry Eris and take over the Boreas family, but Rudy declines, considering himself just a 10-year-old kid. Later, Rudy goes to his room to sleep and finds Eris sitting on her bed in a delightful mood. Rudy tries to get closer to her by getting naked, losing his senses. However, Eris beats him up and he apologizes. Since it is Rudy's special day, she graciously accepts his apologies and tells him to control himself until he becomes an adult in 5 years. Rudy jumps with happiness and decides to control himself until then, but he suddenly remembers Sylphie. On the other side, Paul is fighting monsters in his village that have recently become more active. They are eager to celebrate Rudy's birthday, and all family members, including Sylphie and maid Lilia, have prepared various gifts to send to him. Meanwhile, Paul and the family suddenly notice unusual dark clouds approaching. Roxy also senses the increase in magical power, and other magicians around the world notice the great surge in magical energy. Even the Empress of the Demon Realm, Kishirika, realizes that someone is attempting to release the seal on the demon god Laplace. As Rudy practices magic with his new wand, trying out multiple attacks, he finds its power impressive. However, the sky suddenly becomes dark and unusual. Gillian also senses a tremendous amount of magic and suggests they leave the area. Suddenly, a man named Almanfi appears and launches multiple attacks to kill Rudy. He introduces himself as someone ordered by the legendary Perugius to eliminate the person causing abnormalities, whom he believes is Rudy. Gillian introduces herself as the Sword King and reveals her master. Almanfi sheathes his weapon, and Rudy begins to contemplate the situation. Suddenly, a bright light emanates from above, causing Almanfi to vanish, and the sky explodes. Everyone, including Gillian, Eris, and Rudy, starts running for safety. Later, Rudeus finds himself in a mysterious location where he encounters a being known as the human god, Hitagami. Hitagami reveals that Rudeus is experiencing a dream and has been brought there to receive important advice. The reason Rudeus appears in his old body is because that's how he perceives himself mentally, and he will return to his physical body upon waking up. Hitagami explains that the earlier blast was a mana cataclysm that transported Rudeus to this place. He advises Rudeus to have faith in the person he wakes up next to, and to assist them in any way they need in order to survive. Rudeus wakes up next to a sleeping Spurd named Ruijerd, with Eris nearby and Gillian absent. Initially, Rudeus feels uneasy due to the mentions of Spurds by his parents and Roxy. However, he attempts to communicate with Ruijerd using the demon tongue. Ruijerd reveals his name and expresses his determination to safely return Eris and Rudeus home. Eris is initially frightened of Ruijerd, but over time, she begins to trust him. They embark on a hike through the desert, and Ruijerd explains that his third eye, also known as the Red Diamond, enables him to sense the presence of monsters. After a while, they stumble upon a village inhabited by blue-haired demons. The villagers notice Rudeus's necklace, given to him by his mentor, Roxy, causing them to react strongly. It is revealed that Roxy herself is from this demon tribe. Surprisingly, Rudeus gets the chance to meet Roxy's parents during their stay in the village. While sitting around a fire, Rudeus learns that Ruijerd cannot freely enter cities due to a red mark on his forehead. Nevertheless, Ruijerd is determined to change the perception and improve the reputation of Spurds. They recount the events of 400 years ago, explaining why Spurds are feared. The Demon King, Laplace, played a significant role in the past. Laplace wanted to incite demons against humans and sought the aid of the Spurd tribe. He provided them with cursed spears, which caused uncontrollable rage and led the Spurds to indiscriminately attack and kill, including their own families and innocent children. Ruijerd carries the spear once used by his own son. The following morning, Ruijerd, Rudeus, and Eris bid farewell to Roxy's place. Before they leave, Roxy's parents present Rudeus with a sword and a small pouch containing something of significance, and Rudeus firmly resolves to assist Ruijerd in redeeming the Spurd tribe's reputation. As Eris enjoys her new sword by testing it on monsters, Rudeus and Ruijerd have dinner consisting of monster meat. They plan to enter a city, but Ruijerd informs them that he won't be allowed in because of his nickname Dead End, which scares people across the demon continent. Ruijerd suggests he could easily jump over the city wall, but Rudeus advises against it to prevent causing panic. Using blue goo nearby, Rudeus changes Ruijerd's hair color. Since they are all broke, they decide to sign up at an adventurer's guild to earn rewards. They adopt the name Dead End to help Ruijerd gain recognition by completing quests together. They introduce Ruijerd to a group of loud adventurers, but they laugh at him and doubt his abilities. A horse demon trolls them before they leave. Rudeus buys a cloak for Eris, and they go to have a meal together. During their meal, a group of adventurers asks Eris to join their party, but she doesn't respond. Accidentally, they break the button on Eris's cloak, which infuriates her and leads her to mercilessly beat one of the adventurers. Rudeus apologizes, heals the injured adventurer, and they leave to stay at a nearby inn. Rudeus calculates that if they continue doing low-ranked missions, they won't be able to afford to stay in inns. During the night, Hitagami appears in Rudeus's dream once again. Frustrated with being trapped in his old body, Rudeus urges Hitagami to quickly reveal any important information so that he can return to his child form. Hitagami advises Rudeus to take a quest to find a lost kitten. Rudeus feels confused as such quests don't offer significant rewards, but he trusts Hitagami enough to accept the quest the next morning. Ruijerd uses his third eye or red diamond to locate the kitten. They discover that the kitten resembles more of a panther than a typical domestic cat. They also learn that a group of adventurers has been capturing small animals and then returning them when a quest to find them is posted by the guild. Rudeus, Eris, and Ruijerd confront them, and Rudeus attempts to scare one of them into revealing why they trap animals. Loman, one of the adventurers, kicks Rudeus with great force, sending him flying into a wall. Witnessing this, Ruijerd swiftly decapitates Loman, terrifying his guildmates. Rudeus tries to explain to Ruijerd that killing isn't always the solution, but Ruijerd doesn't understand and remains confused about Rudeus's reaction. Rudeus threatens the remaining two guildmates and demands that they undertake a higher level C-rank quest at the Adventurers Guild. He also insists on exchanging quests with their team. By doing so, Rudeus and his guild can take on more challenging quests and increase the recognition of the Dead End name. Back at the Adventurers Guild, they discover that the reward for their F-rank mission is only 1 coin, which shocks Rudeus, Ruijerd, and Eris. The episode ends with the 2 remaining guildmates emerging from the hall and following Rudeus's instructions. Lastly, a horse demon mocks the group of 5. Later, Roxy looks at a bulletin board that lists the names of those who died in the Mana Cataclysm. Surprisingly, Rudeus and his family members are not on the list. 2 people nearby are discussing Rudeus with anger. Roxy decides to write a letter for Rudeus, leaving it on the bulletin board. The letter mentions that she is taking care of Nor and going to Zenith's homeland of Millies to search for Aisha, Lilia, and Zenith, who are still missing. Roxy believes that Rudeus will be fine on his own. Rudeus, Eris, and Ruijerd embark on a quest to explore the petrified forest and uncover the truth about a terrifying monster. However, when they arrive, they encounter 2 other teams who also received the same quest. It seems that the guild accidentally assigned the quest to 3 different teams simultaneously. The team of pig demons declares that they will find and defeat the monster first, claiming the reward for themselves. Ruijerd expresses concern for Kurt's team, as they are children, and they decide to follow them and intervene if necessary. The situation becomes intense, but Rudeus prevents Ruijerd from interfering too early as it wouldn't enhance their reputation. However, Rudeus waits too long, resulting in the loss of one of Kurt's team members. Rudeus feels a strong sense of guilt, and Ruijerd is furious with him. However, Kurt reassures Rudeus, stating that it wasn't his fault and taking responsibility for not being strong enough. Kurt and her surviving teammates leave. They hear the pig demon struggling in a fight against the Redwood Cobra, the monster they were supposed to investigate. Rudeus instructs his group to intervene before any more casualties occur. Rudeus attempts to attack with a fireball but misses. Ruijerd damages the monster with his spear, and Eris tries to slash it with her sword but fails. Rudeus misses another fireball attack. The monster is about to attack Rudeus, but Ruijerd intercepts, and Eris finishes it off with a single powerful strike. Rudeus deals the final blow with his fireball. They win the battle, but Ruijerd discovers the dead pig demon and feels sorrowful for not arriving in time. Upon returning to the city, they encounter Nakapara, the horse demon, who tries to threaten them and demands half of their monthly incomes. Rudeus desperately tries to figure out a way to escape this situation. Meanwhile, Ruijerd surprises everyone by revealing his green hair by pouring water over his head. This shocks people, as they believe he is the real Dead End. Ruijerd threatens Nakapara, stating that they are leaving the city and that if their license is revoked, he will kill him. As the guards approach to arrest Ruijerd, he flees, leaving Rudeus and Eris on their own. They stumble upon Kurt and her remaining teammate, who are astonished to see Ruijerd. That night, Rudeus and Eris search for Ruijerd and apologize for their respective mistakes. Ruijerd also apologizes for not understanding Rudeus's situation. They camp outside the city walls, and the next morning, they find that Ruijerd has shaved his hair to avoid being recognized. Rudeus gives him a headband, symbolizing their decision to make choices together from now on. Later, Eris, Rudeus, and Ruijerd reach the sea. Eris attempts to undress, hoping to swim. but Ruijerd stops them due to the presence of dangerous sea monsters. Roxy reminds the group of their goal for the trip. Later, Rudeus, Eris, and Ruijerd search for a boat to travel from the demon continent to Millie's. The boatman greets them with nicknames, referring to Eris as Mad Dog and forgetting Rudeus's name. Shocked, they learn that the boat trip costs 200 green ore coins. During lunch, they discuss their money problem, and Eris suggests Ruijerd run across the sea, which he refuses. That night, Rudeus falls asleep pondering their predicament and has another dream encounter with Hitagami. Rudeus is initially skeptical after the previously failed advice, but listens as Hitagami suggests buying lots of food from street stalls and walking through back alleys. Hitagami disappears suddenly. The next morning, Eris and Ruijerd practice sword fighting, but Ruijerd loses focus upon seeing Roxy behind Eris, much to Eris's delight. Meanwhile, Rudeus follows Hitagami's advice, buying plenty of food and walking back. As he senses Roxy's presence, he takes a few more steps and hears joyful sounds of women enjoying their lives. Along the way, he encounters a girl begging for food, with bees buzzing around her. Rudeus gives her food, and to his surprise, the girl performs a backflip after eating and thanks him for saving her life, as she can now live for another year. The girl introduces herself as Kishika, the demon emperor, in a vibrant manner.
かわいそうに。一人で魔王ごっこなんて友達いないんだろうな。
Rudeus playfully respects her as she asks for a wish to fulfill for him. Rudeus suggests making him wealthy or granting him her body, but she refuses, mentioning her fiancé. Instead, she rewards him by replacing one of his eyes with a demon eye before leaving. Struggling with his new eye, Rudeus finds it difficult to see properly. However, he manages to save a man from falling objects when he reconsiders the situation. Rudeus discusses the eye's capabilities with Ruijerd, who explains that Kishika possesses 12 demon eyes and can see through all things. Eris becomes excited to meet her. Rudeus decides to stay home until he becomes accustomed to the eye. After a week, Rudeus becomes more comfortable with the eye, realizing it is similar to casting magic. He can control the amount of magic power used, allowing him to see ahead by 2 seconds. Using his newfound skills, he easily defeats Eris in a fight, which frustrates her. She leaves for home, and Ruijerd commends Rudeus for his mastery of the demon eye. Ruijerd challenges Rudeus but ends up losing badly. While sitting together, Rudeus appreciates Eris for her previous victory against Ruijerd to lighten her mood. Later, Rudeus contemplates taking Eris back home and considers selling his wand to get the necessary money. He ventures out at night but is caught by Ruijerd. They have an emotional conversation about trust and making decisions together. Rudeus realizes that selling the wand, which Eris made for his birthday, would hurt her. Ruijerd's pride also prevents him from selling the wand. Ruijerd decides to take the smuggler's boat, known as the Evil Eye, for their journey. Suddenly, a man named Gallus Cleaner arrives to thank Rudeus for saving him earlier and introduces himself. The story shifts to Roxy, Elinalise, and Talhan in the city searching for Paul's family. Elinalise is interested in men and seeks enjoyable nights with them, causing them to waste time wherever they go. During a conversation, Roxy mentions a dangerous demon named Dead End. Talon tells Roxy about a party of 3 individuals around the demon continent: Mad Dog Eris, Watchdog Ruijerd, and Pet Owner Ruijerd. Roxy advises them to stay away from them as they might be powerful. They haven't made any progress in finding clues about Paul's family and decide to gather information the next morning. While taking a walk near the beach, Rudeus encounters Eris and Ruijerd practicing swordsmanship. Roxy, sneaking around, gets caught by Ruijerd. Fearful of Eris, she hides in a room and accidentally casts a spell that breaks the wall, resulting in costly repairs. They proceed to the next town. Gallus Cleaner agrees to smuggle and transport Ruijerd across the sea. Rudeus fantasizes about an enjoyable adventure on the ship with Eris, battling monsters, getting stranded on an island, and having delightful nights together. However, Eris starts vomiting due to seasickness. Rudeus, although having impure thoughts, controls his attraction to Eris's body. They finally reach their destination, and Eris decides never to travel by ship again. Rudeus leaves to pick up Ruijerd and instructs Eris to take care of herself. Later, Rudeus arrives at a secret location and knocks on a door. He is taken to an underground basement where smuggling activities occur. On the way, he witnesses a fierce dog and the killing of a beast woman who sought help. Upon reaching Ruijerd, the person in charge orders Rudeus to take him and leave. Ruijerd tells Rudeus to listen carefully, revealing that some people from the beast race have been kidnapped. 6 of them are still captive, with 1 already killed. They decide to kill the guards and rescue the captives. Rudeus worries about Ruijerd's spurred nature potentially scaring people if exposed, but he rethinks and decides to save them. They release Ruijerd, who starts eliminating the guards. Rudeus approaches the imprisoned women, initially scaring them, but he starts healing them. Ruijerd joins them, killing the remaining guards. Unfortunately, they fail to revive the woman who was killed. Rudeus commands them all to follow him to the nearest town, speaking in the beast language. One of the women reminds Rudeus that they left the beast dog behind. Bravely, Rudeus returns to the building alone to rescue the dog, encountering a barrier that he breaks with his magic. The dog becomes happy and starts licking him. Suddenly, another beast man appears with a powerful attack, stunning Rudeus and rendering him unable to speak or move. The beast man identifies him as a smuggler and smiles creepily. Another beast man senses the others heading towards the town, prompting him to follow them. He orders the other one to take the boy and the beast dog back to the village while he takes Rudeus with him for severe punishment. Later, Rudeus finds himself living in a rent-free apartment made of warm Japanese beech wood. The bed is surrounded by bugs, and there's a unique toilet that allows direct waste disposal to the ground. The apartment also includes delicious breakfast and dinner. However, Rudeus soon realizes that it is actually a prison exclusively for criminals. Despite being able to use magic to escape easily, he remains unaware of his location and decides to stay, hoping to explain the situation to someone. One day, a female guard arrives, and Rudeus tries to explain himself but is dismissed as a pervert. Cold water is thrown on him whenever he speaks out, leaving him feeling hopeless and praying for help. As days pass, Rudeus watches birds and other activities while waiting for Eris and Ruigerd to arrive. He occasionally thinks about Ruigerd engaged in fights with the beastmen but tries to stop overthinking and desperately awaits their arrival. One morning, a new guy named Geese is thrown into prison alongside Rudeus. Despite being naked, Rudeus welcomes him as a newbie and calls himself Senpai.
どうした？シリ。
Rudeus asks Geese about a red-haired girl, hoping for some information. But Geese knows nothing. At night, Rudeus receives a massage from Geese while daydreaming about being with 100 women. They also discuss their escape plans, with Rudeus emphasizing his innocence and concern for his comrades. Rudeus asks Geese to be his guide, but Geese refuses, leading to an argument. During their argument, Rudeus notices that the girl guarding them is no longer present, and the environment becomes hotter. Suddenly, they witness a fire spreading around them. In a rush, Rudeus quickly opens the cage, only to see smugglers killing the beastmen and capturing their children. Rudeus sees this as an opportunity to escape but reconsiders and discusses with Geese the possibility of helping them all. They begin by taking down one smuggler, and Rudeus uses his magic to create cold air and rain, extinguishing the fire. As the smugglers attack them, aware of Rudeus's magical abilities, a beastman arrives, the same one who imprisoned Rudeus before. With his speed and skill, the beastman manages to kill some smugglers. He asks Rudeus and Geese for help in rescuing the kidnapped children. Just then, Gallus Cleaner arrives with a hostage, revealing himself as the true smuggler who used Rudeus and the others as bait to distract the skilled Doldia group. The beastman launches an attack on Gallus, showcasing the North God style, a formidable fighting technique. Rudeus finds it challenging to defeat Gallus, and the situation seems bleak when Gallus walks with a crying child in hand, causing Rudeus to lose hope momentarily. However, the beast dog arrives and attacks Gallus, while Geese throws sand in his face, temporarily incapacitating him. Rudeus casts a powerful spell, resulting in a blast that successfully defeats Gallus. In the process, Rudeus sustains an injury from a knife attack, causing him to fall unconscious. When Rudeus wakes up, he sees the dog licking his face, and Eris, Ruigerd, and others are present. Eris informs him that he has defeated a North Saint. The beastmen apologize to Rudeus for their previous behavior and express their gratitude, thanking him for his help. Rudeus questions Eris about arriving late and expresses his worries. Eris explains the trouble they faced, including Ruigerd's encounter with the Doldia group, which almost led to a fight due to misunderstandings. They resolve the conflict and continue their search for the other smugglers. Eris was tasked with guarding the kidnapped children. As Rudeus talks with Eris, he mentions the numerous stories he plans to share with the Boreas family, including their time in the Beast Village. Eris happily anticipates bragging about their grandpa meeting them soon. Meanwhile, on the other side, Grandpa is causing chaos and facing opposition due to his failure to establish legitimate measures in the region. As a result, he is beheaded, leaving Eris hoping for a happy life.
ですが、エリス、もし生きているなら、どうか幸せに。
Later, Eris had a great time with the kids, Terusina and Tona, at a nearby lake. Meanwhile, the usual scum, Rudeus, was watching them from a hole while sitting in a box. Suddenly, he kicked a dog, and Mushuko arrived on the scene. Rudeus started making excuses and warned Mushuko to stay away from her daughter, Tona. However, Rudeus quickly apologized when confronted and even warned about the dangers of his previous gambling activities, which resulted in Gallus and Geese being imprisoned. They all had a peaceful dinner together, and Eris took the opportunity to teach the kids some language skills. Mushuko thanked Eris for getting along with her daughter and noticed a ring on Eris's finger, which was proof of her association with the Doldia people. The ring had been gifted to Eris by Ghislaine on her birthday. The atmosphere suddenly changed as Mushuko referred to Ghislaine as a jerk for giving up on protecting the Great Forest, and Beast Sama. She decided to take her daughter away in anger. Eris ran back to them and defended Ghislaine, stating that she was her master and an amazing person who always protected her. Rudeus comforted Eris, preventing her from crying, and told Mushuko that they respected Ghislaine a lot. Later, Eris thought about how much she loved Ghislaine, and the kids asked her to tell them more about Aunt Ghislaine, who was Mushuko's little sister. Eris explained Ghislaine's strength and swordsmanship, cautioning the kids not to become like her. Eris expressed her gratitude to Ghislaine for teaching her swordsmanship, and Tona asked Eris to teach her Ghislaine's swordsmanship. Eris agreed, and Mushuko overheard their conversation. Later, they practiced swordsmanship together while Mushuko and Rudeus had a conversation about Gillian. Mushuko noticed a change in Gillian. 3 months passed, and Teresina mentioned that the rainy season would soon come to an end. Eris informed them that they would be leaving once the rainy season was over. Tona started crying, and Rudeus created a statue, occupying himself with playing with the beast. A woman taunted Rudeus for being lustful, which upset Teresina. Suddenly, Teresina ran to Eris, who was being beaten by Tona. Tona wanted Eris to stay forever and was angry about her leaving. Later, Tona lay on her bed, and Teresina asked her to apologize to Eris. Mushuko arrived and informed Tona that Eris, Rudeus, and Ruijerd would be leaving the next day. She explained that Gillian had always trained alone and had a bad temper, often hurting people around her like a monster. Gillian left the village with a swordsman, and Mushuko regretted not saving her earlier. She doubted that Gillian would ever return and asked Tona if she wanted to part ways with Eris as well. Later, the kids sneaked into Eris's room, and Tona apologized for being selfish. Eris, along with the kids, became happier seeing the wooden statues they had created together. The next morning, everyone was prepared to leave. The kids cried, along with Eris, and everyone hoped they would visit the village again. Mushuko wanted a friendly match with Eris before they left, and they had a duel. Surprisingly, Eris lost, confusing Rudeus. Eventually, they bid emotional goodbyes and began their journey. During their travels, Geese unexpectedly joined them, having escaped from prison. Geese decided to travel with them and shared some suspicious stories about the road and the 7 strongest warriors in the world. After traveling for a long time and having a great time together, they finally reached the Holy Millie's kingdom. Geese decided to part ways with them, hoping to meet again in the future. The team had a meeting to discuss their strategy as Dead End, a team that had been sent off to the Demon Continent a year and a half ago. Their next plan was to head to Ashura, but they stopped in the Holy Millie's kingdom to earn some money for efficient travel. Rudeus came up with a brilliant strategy to clear the fear of the supered race from people's minds by helping them and rewarding them with an amulet of Ruijerd. He also intended to write a letter to his family. Meanwhile, Eris decided to fight goblins around the city. The next morning, Rudeus sat thinking about what to write to his brother Paul. Suddenly, he witnessed a kidnapping taking place, which went against the Dead End team's rule of never abandoning children. In pursuit of justice, Rudeus followed the kidnappers and sneakily entered the room where they were keeping the child. Rudeus assessed the strength of his opponents and discovered that they were trying to feed the kid. He searched the nearby boxes and realized that he had touched the same cloth before, which turned out to be panties. Mistakenly, he shouted and introduced himself as Ruijerd of Dead End, wearing the panties on his face. The opponents felt fear, and Rudeus attacked, eliminating all of them. While Rudeus looked at the kid's face, he suddenly remembered seeing him before. More people arrived, and a woman identified her panties, which Rudeus had worn. Rudeus, being his usual scum self, couldn't focus on the fight as she kept attacking and called him a pervert. The captain, who was drunk, arrived, and Rudeus recognized him as the man he had seen earlier. The captain approached with fast movements to attack, but suddenly fell for Rudeus's magic trick. However, he quickly got back up and sliced the rock that Rudeus had created, inadvertently slicing his own panties. Rudeus's face was revealed, and it turned out that the captain was actually his dad, Paul. Later, they sat in a bar with others watching them, and Paul was glad that Rudeus had survived. He asked about the message Rudeus had sent, but Rudeus couldn't remember receiving any message recently. However, Rudeus explained the troubles he had faced since the teleportation incident, and how they ended up where they were, considering it a fun journey. Paul misunderstood and criticized Rudeus for not thinking about his family and trying to gather information about the others when he was on the Demon Continent. Paul also pointed out that Rudeus hadn't even written a letter to anyone and had been spending his time with a young lady and a guard. The situation heated up as Rudeus taunted Paul about the women by his side, referring to Zenith and Lilia. They engaged in a fight, with Rudeus describing the difficulties he had faced. Suddenly, a young girl pushed Rudeus to stop beating her dad. Rudeus identified her as Norn, his little sister, and walked away sadly, planning to leave the city as soon as possible. He spent some hard times in his room, contemplating what to do. He became sick of weakness, and then Eris and Ruijerd arrived and found Rudeus weak and emotionally broken. Eris tried to comfort him. Later, the story shifts focus to Paul. He suddenly teleports and opens his eyes in an unfamiliar place, a flat ground with nothing but grass and trees. He holds Norn in his hands and remembers seeing the dark sky along with his family. He survives alone in the forest, protecting Norn and traveling until he reaches a village full of camps. There, he learns about what actually happened and gathers a team to find people. He spends his days with his daughter and becomes addicted to drinking alcohol as he falls into depression. Geese arrives at a bar in search of Paul and finds him heavily drinking, in a bad mood. Geese asks him to join the guild tomorrow as he wants to show him something. He inquires about Paul's depression, and Paul explains the whole scenario to his son. Geese helps him understand that he is expecting too much from his 11-year-old son, who is a genius at casting magic and managed to survive on the Demon Continent by himself. Geese explains the difficulties of surviving in the demon continent, considering that Paul is from the central continent and has never been there. He tells Paul about Rudeus's journey in a happier way, emphasizing that Rudeus has already gone through a lot. Geese leaves, saying that Paul should be happier to see each other safe and healthy, making Paul rethink his perspective. At night, while Norn is sleeping, Paul imagines a view of Rudeus crying for help. Realizing his state, and being heavily drunk, he throws water on himself to sober up. The next morning, Rudeus, Eris, and Ruigerd are having breakfast near the hotel when Paul arrives, clean-shaven. Eris, full of anger, tries to stop Paul, but Ruigerd takes her out. Paul and Rudeus sit alone together and have a talk where Paul apologizes for his behavior the previous day. Rudeus also feels sorry, and as the discussion continues, the bar owner watches the whole scenario. Rudeus tells Paul about his plan to take Eris to the Fitoa region, but Paul reveals that the region no longer exists and the people are gone. However, Rudeus continues with his plan, mentioning his intention to search for his mother and Lilia. He describes his plans, and just as Rudeus was about to walk away, the bar owner comes up with a drink and tells Rudeus to at least look at his father's face. Rudeus remembers his friend from the past who was trying to cheer him up while playing games but ended up getting beaten. He never had a chance to apologize or meet again. Rudeus realizes that Paul has come to apologize, and with a happy face, he proposes that they act like adults, forget what happened yesterday, and cheer up for their reunion after several years. He asks Paul to spread his hands and kneel down. Suddenly, Rudeus hugs him with a jump, filled with emotions of missing each other, and they both cry. Later, they have a happier talk in a room as they reunite. Eris shows up with a beaten face, indicating that Ruigerd had difficulties stopping her. Paul apologizes for troubling them, and Rudeus heals Eris. Rudeus comes up with a different plan for traveling to the central continent the next day, as his father Paul has provided the travel fee and introduction letters. Rudeus explains the possibility of not finding Philip along with Ghislaine and others due to the teleportation. However, Eris is already prepared. The next morning, they leave, saying an emotional goodbye to Norn and Paul, with the hope of meeting them again. Geese also departs, heading for Bigariat as he is done searching there. As Rudeus and the others continue their journey, they encounter some guys challenging Ruigerd to a fight. However, Ruigerd easily defeats them and gives them an amulet. Later, they travel on a ship, and both Rudeus and Eris have a hard time with seasickness. Eris keeps calling Rudeus to heal her, while Ruigerd remains unaffected. During the journey, Rudeus talks about his relationship with Paul and their current location in the middle of the journey. He also discusses the rice production area, as he loves eating rice and gives priority to finding his family and clearing the name of the supered race. However, there is still no clue about Zenith, Aisha, Ghislaine, or Sylphie. Rudeus tries to remain positive and hopeful about finding them. Meanwhile, Roxy learns that her friend Blaze has died and was swallowed by the redwood cobra. Rudeus's horse friend shares that he got into trouble with 3 guys called Dead End, which makes Rudeus fearful. He asks Roxy about her parents, and she replies that nobody feels happy for her if she goes there because she can't use telepathy, which makes everyone uncomfortable around the village. However, the horse friend motivates Roxy to visit her village so she won't regret it. Roxy embarks on her way to visit the village and notices that a few more people have joined, but the village remains creepily quiet, just like before. She suddenly sees a woman standing and has a feeling of rocks knocking, which she tries to control. On her way, she reflects on how much she hates the village and never wanted to come back. She sees children playing and remembers a drawing she made on a rock when she was a kid. One child falls and gets hurt, and Roxy uses her healing magic to help him. However, she runs away from there as she keeps hearing those sounds. When Roxy arrives at her home, her mom and dad are happy to see her back again. Roxy stays in a bad mood, not talking much. Her parents tell her to stay as long as she wants, but Roxy insists on leaving, claiming she is on a busy journey. Her mom grabs her hand and starts crying. Roxy sees her toys arranged and remembers the time she used to play with them when nobody wanted to talk to her because she couldn't use telepathy as a heretic. She recalls thinking that her parents would be happy if she were gone. Roxy also cries and feels apologetic to her dad and mom. The next morning, Roxy wakes up, has breakfast, and tells her parents that she has to leave because her disciple is missing. Her parents inform her that Rudeus, along with Eris and Ruigerd, a supered, was in the village. Hearing about the supered, Roxy loses her senses. She bids her parents goodbye with the hope of meeting Rudeus again. As Roxy continues her journey, she figures out that the rumors about the 3 dead-end people were actually about Rudeus and his party. Upon reaching home, she finds Elinalise having delightful moments as she uses her magic again.
It should have been me, not him! It's not fair!
Later, they travel towards the northwest of the demon continent in search of Paul's family, with the hope of meeting Rudeus somewhere along the way. Rudeus finds himself once again in a dream encounter with the Hitagami god, reflecting on the previous advice he received and the mysterious demon eye. In this dream, Rudeus is reverted back to his old self, evoking both gratitude and anger within him. He anxiously awaits God's next guidance, seeking information about his family members. The god insists that when Rudeus reunites with his family, he must follow the advice given and refrain from fighting when brought into the dream realm. Hitagami presents advice to Rudeus, showing Aisha in distress and crying before the soldiers. The god suggests that Rudeus should not reveal his real name to her, and instead write a letter to someone he knows in the palace of Shiren Kingdom to inquire about the situation. Assuring Rudeus that he will rescue Lilia and Aisha, the god departs, leaving Rudeus abruptly waking up and feeling sick. The following morning, Rudeus and his companions finally arrive in the kingdom. During their boat journey, they enjoy their time together, savoring rice. Eris finds joy in the presence of people and animals around her. Rudeus contemplates writing a letter to Roxy, as she previously worked in the palace and may help in saving Lilia and Aisha. He informs Eris and Ruijerd that, according to a certain source, his family is being held captive somewhere in the kingdom. He seeks their assistance in gathering information while keeping the source undisclosed. As they approach their destination, Rudeus decides to write a letter to Roxy in the palace. While heading back home, Rudeus senses someone following him, casting a shadowy presence. Reacting instinctively, he conjures a defensive wall, only to discover that it is Aisha engaged in a struggle with soldiers to retrieve her letter. Aisha expresses her gratitude to Rudeus for saving her and pleads for his help to rescue her mother, Lilia. The commotion alarms the soldiers, but Rudeus uses his magic to escape. Aisha introduces herself and thanks Rudeus, while he introduces himself as Shadow Moon Knight, as instructed by God. Rudeus tries to inquire about Aisha's knowledge of him, which leads to her revealing that her brother found Rudeus's secret box of panties, deeming him a pervert. Rudeus realizes God's warning about revealing his real name was to avoid such situations, but decides to entrust Aisha with rescuing Lilia. As Aisha falls asleep, Rudeus instructs the others to refer to him as pet owner in front of her, to maintain the false information she has about him. They all eagerly await a reply from Roxy, Aisha's master, the next morning. To their surprise, a palace servant arrives and informs Rudeus that Roxy has sent her to accompany him to the palace. Rudeus leaves with his backpack and instructs the others to take care of Aisha in his absence. Upon reaching the palace, Rudeus is instructed to surrender his belongings, including his wand, raising his suspicions. Nonetheless, he prepares himself to meet his master. As the door opens, Rudeus is confronted by a person seated on a chair, and to his horror, he sees Lilia bound. The person demands Roxy's presence and orders the guards to release a magic circle, a high-level barrier, trapping Roxy and using Rudeus as bait. The person reveals himself as Pax, the 7th Prince of Shiren, who intends to keep Roxy as a lifelong slave. Pax also plans to execute Rudeus by severing his head. Realizing that he may have been deceived by God, Rudeus questions the validity of the advice he followed. Lilia witnessed the Mana Cataclysm unfolding, observing a massive blue beam enveloping Rudeus and Eris before rapidly expanding towards them. Acting quickly, Lilia grabbed Aisha, resulting in their teleportation together. After regaining consciousness, they found themselves submerged in an unfamiliar body of water. Lilia brought Aisha to the surface and they made their way to the nearest town. In the town, Lilia sought information about Roxy Magurdia's location within the palace from a guard. Unfortunately, Pax overheard their conversation and promptly threw them into a dungeon. Meanwhile, Rudeus found himself in surroundings reminiscent of an apartment, attempting to use his magic-proof fuel, leaving him perplexed. Suddenly, the 3rd Prince Pax, also known as the 7th in line to the throne, arrived in the dungeon and began interrogating Rudeus about a Ruijerd statue discovered in his bag. This led to the 3rd Prince revealing a figure of Roxy crafted by Rudeus, sparking an extensive discussion due to their shared affinity for adult content. Simultaneously, Ruijerd, Aisha, and Eris were apprehended by palace guards. Instead of imprisoning them, the guards enlisted their help in rescuing their own captive families, who were being held hostage by Pax himself. Ruijerd entrusted Eris with watching over Aisha while he embarked on the mission to save the families. Zenoba, rumored to possess extraordinary strength from childhood incidents, forcefully dragged Pax out of bed and brought him to Rudeus's dungeon. With determination, Zenoba demanded Rudeus's release, prompting a hesitant but eventual compliance from Pax. Rudeus was overjoyed to reunite with Lilia, who embraced him from behind, expressing immense relief. Lilia disclosed her plan to train Aisha as Rudeus's future maid as she grew older and presented a small box containing Roxy's undergarments. Aisha approached Rudeus, expressing her desire to join him on his journeys and her aversion to serving her perverted elder brother. She speculated on becoming charming as she grew up, attempting to persuade Rudeus. However, Rudeus gently reminded her that such talk was inappropriate for a child. Nonetheless, he offered her his headband as a keepsake, suggesting that perhaps her brother cherished the undergarments similarly. As Lilia and Aisha bid farewell and departed, Aisha apologized for previously labeling Rudeus as a pervert and affectionately referred to him as Oni-chan. While surprised by Aisha's realization, they acknowledged her intelligence, which left Lilia feeling unsurprised by the revelation. Ruijerd and Eris lay motionless on the ground while a furious gaze fixated on Dead End. Rudeus reflected on the unpredictability of life, acknowledging that unexpected events, such as being struck by a truck or, unfortunately, facing death can occur. A flashback took them back to a time when Eris, Ruijerd, and Rudeus prepared for a snowy mountain journey. Just before setting off, Eris and Rudeus engaged in a friendly sparring match. Rudeus praised Eris, recognizing her as a true and honorable warrior. Overjoyed by his words, Eris asked Rudeus to pinch her, needing confirmation that it wasn't all just a dream. During their mountain expedition, they encountered a man with an angry expression, whom they briefly glimpsed during Turning Point 1 in Part 1, walking alongside a masked woman. Fear gripped Eris and Rudeus upon seeing them, their eyes locked on the imposing pair. In contrast, Rudeus remained unfazed by their presence and didn't tense up like his companions. As the man and woman passed by, Rudeus urgently whispered to Rudeus, instructing him to stay still and silent. Meanwhile, their boar companion unexpectedly leaped off the cliff's edge. Orsted turned around and observed the group, recognizing Rudeus and Rudeus Greyrat. However, he was unfamiliar with Rudeus. Foolishly, Rudeus asked Orsted to pause for a moment and introduced himself.
Rudeus, 絶対に動くな。
Hey, it's me, Goku!
Dumb ways to die.
The man doubted Rudeus's claim, stating that Paul Greyrat should only have 2 daughters and no sons. Confused by this, Rudeus inquired about the Mana Cataclysm, but Orsted claimed ignorance of the matter. As they prepared to part ways, Orsted suddenly questioned Rudeus about recognizing the man god. Rudeus affirmed, mentioning the name occasionally appearing in his dreams. In an instant, Orsted launched an attack toward Rudeus, prompting Rudeus to intervene and protect him. Despite Rudeus' efforts, Orsted managed to incapacitate him and accused Rudeus of being a follower of Hitagami. He then stabbed Rudeus in the chest, causing him to fall to the ground seemingly lifeless.
Dumb ways to die.
Encountering Hitagami once again in this state, Rudeus conversed with him in a peculiar manner, expressing gratitude for being able to save Aisha and Lilia before his demise. He expressed thankfulness for the opportunity to have a second chance at life, acknowledging that not everyone is granted such an opportunity. Although he admitted to having regrets, Rudeus did not direct his anger at Hitagami as he did in his premature death. Wondering about his journey to the afterlife, Rudeus was advised by Hitagami to wait. Further insights into Rudeus and Orsted were revealed. Orsted was unveiled as the second most powerful among the 7 mentioned by Geese in previous episodes, even though he did not hold the top rank. Rudeus inquired if the technique god held the first rank, which was confirmed by Hitagami. Hitagami stated that if not for Orsted's curses, he would emerge as the victor in a fight. One of these curses was responsible for Eris and Rudeus freezing in fear when encountering Orsted. Additionally, Rudeus carried a trace of that curse within the spear he received from Lapalace, the demon who fought alongside the Spurds in the war. However, since meeting Rudeus, the influence of the curse had gradually diminished. Hitagami then informed Rudeus that he was not yet dead. Rudeus regained consciousness in Eris' embrace, finding her in tears. She informed him that Orsted returned after the woman named Nanahoshi said something significant. Orsted had cast a healing spell on Rudeus, bringing him back to life. Rudeus awoke from a terrifying dream to find Eris peacefully sleeping beside him, while Rudeus was already awake. He shared with Rudeus the words spoken by Hitagami regarding the gradual weakening of the curse on the Spurd. Rudeus explained that the curse would eventually disappear, and it had already begun to diminish. Overwhelmed with relief, Rudeus turned away from Rudeus and shed tears. The 3 of them then set off on horseback, embarking on their journey. During their travels, Rudeus and Eris stumbled upon Rudeus's abandoned hometown on the central continent. As they explored the deserted place, Rudeus was flooded with flashbacks from his past, reminiscing about his time spent there. Eventually, Rudeus made the decision to leave, expressing his gratitude to Rudeus for everything he had done for him and the Spurd tribe. He acknowledged Eris' strength and predicted that she would surpass him one day. Despite the emotions in his heart, Rudeus departed, leaving Rudeus feeling emotional. Soon after, as Eris and Rudeus resumed their journey, they encountered a camp filled with survivors from the central continent. Among them, Eris spotted Gillan and immediately embraced her, relieved to see her safe. However, their joy was short-lived as Alphonse delivered devastating news. Hilda and Lord Philip, Eris' beloved parents, had tragically passed away due to being teleported together. Furthermore, Eris learned that her grandfather, Lord Soros, had been executed for the crime of teleportation, and a new ruler had taken the throne, demanding her hand in marriage if she was found. Alphonse, prioritizing the kingdom's interests, was willing to sacrifice Eris, but Gillian vehemently opposed it and urged Eris to escape. In the next scene, Gillian pointed towards a board displaying the names of missing warriors, and Rudeus focused on the list, following Gillian's suggestion. He searched for the names of Zenith and Sylphiette, only to discover that they were still listed as missing and not reported as deceased anywhere. Later that night, while Rudeus slept, Eris entered his room, her sadness evident. Rudeus inquired about her plans following Alphonse's revelations, but Eris expressed her indifference. She desired to create a family with Rudeus, initiating a seductive encounter between them. Flashbacks of their time together flashed through their minds, culminating in a night of intimacy. The following morning, Rudeus woke up, filled with joy upon realizing he had lost his virginity. However, his happiness turned to shock when he discovered a note left by Eris. In the note, Eris revealed her decision to embark on a journey alongside Gillian, but she provided no details about their destination.
Yes! Oh my god!
Rudeus hurriedly sought answers from Alphonse, desperate to know their whereabouts, but Alphonse kept their location undisclosed. Rudeus was left disheartened by Eris's sudden departure, uncertain if and when he would see her again, and he couldn't help but cry. Eris woke up to find Gillian sitting near her, and they decided to continue their journey as it was already morning. Meanwhile, Rudeus was overwhelmed by depression and distressing memories of his troubled past. His parents had done everything they could to support him and take action against the bullies, even successfully getting them expelled. Rudeus's mother would often leave heartfelt notes with the meals she left outside his bedroom. In the next scene, Alphonse entered Rudeus's room and updated him on their current situation. They were running low on wood, food, and tents. Rudeus, still feeling defeated, remained in bed, unable to gather the strength to face the day. The narrative briefly shifted to Eris, who expressed her admiration for Rudeus to Gillian. She recognized his extraordinary nature and his consistent ability to remain in control during their journey. Eris also professed her love for Rudeus and vowed to become stronger so they could defeat the dragon god. The focus then shifted to Ruigerd, who had rescued 3 travelers in need, which helped dispel their fear of him. A small smile appeared on Ruigerd's face as he likely recalled how Rudeus had always been there to assist him. Meanwhile, Zenoba, the third prince who had aided Rudeus in the fight against Pax alongside Geese, was shown traveling through an abandoned landscape. Tona remained at the Beastskin village, where conversations revolved around Rudeus and sword fighting, reflecting the impact he had made on their lives. Back to Rudeus, he was seen crying and deeply saddened by his past, and these memories overwhelmed him. The scene shifted briefly to Kishirika Kishirisu, one of Roxy's teammates, and Talhan engaging in a drinking competition. Despite her small and skinny frame, Kishirika effortlessly outperformed Talhan, leaving him astonished. However, trouble arose when others demanded payment for the drinks she had consumed. Luckily, Roxy Magurdia intervened, paying off the debts and using Kishirika's demon eye to locate anyone Roxy desired. Using Kishirika's ability, Roxy discovered the location of Aisha and Lilia, relieved to learn that they had been reunited. Seeking information about Zenith, Roxy found out that she couldn't get a close look but knew that Zenith was in the labyrinth city of Bigarito continent. Roxy then inquired about Rudeus, and Kishirika revealed that he was very sad and currently in the central continent, which caused Roxy to feel concerned for his well-being. She shared this information with her teammates, and they decided to rescue Zenith while believing that Rudeus would overcome the challenges he was facing. Meanwhile, Rudeus, still battling his depression, had flashbacks of Zenith and forced himself to get up and leave his tent in search of her. As he took those determined steps forward, a glimpse of Rudeus in his past life was shown, leaving his childhood bedroom and embarking on a journey to find Zenith. That concludes the anime recap. As always, if you enjoyed, let me know down below and I'm out.